And welcome back to another episode of Economic Preppers, where I'm your host, Jeff, and I'm here with Dylan and Patrick. Good morning, guys.
Howdy.
Hey guys, good morning.
It's an early debut, early recording to this week. So let's see how we are as far as morning birds. But speaking of being woke, we have more stories in the U.S. about getting woke and going broke. First off, we've got the Bud Light situation, which continues to spiral. We've got Target, and as Ninja covered here, you can see the rainbow right in the middle here. They had a huge area of I'll just call it woke products that they're now trying to recover from, and they're actually pulling from a lot of stores. So Ninja found the display still available right near the front at the store near here in California. And then, of course, I saw this last night from the North Face. So we have another company that's going broke, or getting ready to. So we'll start there. Dylan, what's your take on the liberalism to the extreme that's going on here?
Yeah, just to so we don't get fully canceled, but it's also true. Like, I don't care like what someone's sexuality is. Like, it doesn't really matter to me, but I do care when it's just like forced upon me in places that I don't want to see that. And the North Face one kind of hits home, and I think it's weird that the person's name is Patagonia or something like that. And it's like, well, that's your competitor, North Face. Like, like you're using a name that's your competitor's name. So that immediately stood out to me. Like, okay, like you're kind of almost even promoting a competitor there. But also, it's just like, it was weird. It's just weird. And I'm like, I don't know why it matters. Like, why do you need to wear like whatever that thing was, that like colored like dress thing? It's like,
I'm not showing it again.
Doing that in the wild, like you're crossing the border just from practical standpoint, from like functional mountain gear to like this weird statement piece. And it's like, I just want something that when I go into the mountains, like it fits nice, it looks okay, and like it performs well. I don't need to be like some like bold statement when I'm outside hiking on a trail passing people. Like, I'm not trying to advertise, and maybe that's what they're trying to do nowadays because social media is so prevalent. But at the same time, like, it's just, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see these political messages being forced down my throat by companies that I've liked or supported. And it just feels weird because it feels like you either have to support them or like you just kind of have to be very quiet, or that you take the other route and just like totally sign them off and be like, never again, and boycott them. So it's just kind of frustrating. It's we've seen all the issues that it creates and all the problems that it's created, and people don't really like it seems like, but I guess there's some people that do.
Yeah, Patrick, well, first off, I see it in the in your face thing really resonates with me because I'm still a sports guy and I still see the ads and what happened with the NBA and the NFL and all the sports for the most part taking knees and so on. To me, sports was an escape, and then they they politicized that. So that was another thing. So they really wanted to put it in front of your face. But Patrick, speaking of guy things, and we saw another one, right? We saw another one. Why don't you tell them about what we saw with Ford the other day?
They took, like, supposedly, in my opinion, like one of the most elite, well-known trucks in the world, the Ford Raptor. Like, every guy wants a Ford Raptor. Who doesn't even like a truck? It's a cool truck. And now they put rainbows on it, and they made me not want one anymore. Like, I want a Tundra now.
I have a Ford. I drive a Ford Ranger, and I saw that. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
I told my trainer, I was like, yeah, people who drive Fords, man, because he drives a Ford Mustang, and I was just making fun of him. But this is all just kind of ridiculous, guys. Like, I don't even. I know it's happening, and it deserves and warrants a little bit of a discussion, but to me, when I see this, it reminds me of one thing: our co-ed softball team. I have a shortage of girls on our team, and I have told our team that should we be down a girl, I guess I can go grab one of these North Face things, just start batting with it. I guess you don't really, doesn't matter what it's made for. It's definitely not for hiking in the Oregon woods where they're from. I'll tell you, it's definitely not for hiking in the snow. So it must be for co-ed softball for men.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if you walked up to the plate and said, "I identify as a woman." That would be an interesting conversation with the
Bro, I'm
umpire.
telling you, I
Well,
could sell that all day long. They're woke.
what
They're
would
gonna
they
go woke
do?
and broke here. Like you guys asked me to do this, so I mean, for you
I don't
guys
know
that
what
are
they
listening
do.
out there on my team, I'm not gonna do that. Like I don't think I could possibly put myself in that
I feel
whatever thing
I
that
feel
was.
you on that, Patrick, because there's a ultimate frisbee out here and it's co-ed. And the problem is that frisbee is like I love frisbee. I grew up with it. My parents played it. It's a fun sport, but it is like in the pursuit of being accepting and kind of being the more welcoming sport compared to like your traditional soccer, basketball, football, that can be a little bit more competitive. They've gone a little woke. And one of the things that they do is that's frustrating is for the co-ed leagues, everyone wants to play because it's a really good time. Like, and it's one of those sports that you can have guys and girls competing against each other because they can mark up against each other. And so it's not like, overbalance, or it's not like one person gets dominated. But the problem is there's never enough women that want to play the sport. There's never enough. But there's always a ton of guys. And so the result is like they have to have a certain amount of women. So basically, women, if you're a woman and want to play, you're guaranteed a spot on the team. You're
Yeah.
guaranteed to be able to play in the summer league, no matter how good you are, whatever it is, you're welcome to the team. And they still can't get enough women to sign up. And for men, you have to get on a waiting list and just hope to get lucky to be able to play a sport. And if you don't make that main league, the next league down is not nearly as competitive or fun. And so I was like, well, maybe I just identify as a woman so I can get on the field and get a spot on the team because they are very accepting in that league. But yeah, so I understand you and the co-ed stuff. It's
That's always been a problem. I played co-ed softball for years. That's always been an issue.
Our solutions are jokes. Like we're
know,
literally joking about it, but these people are spending real marketing dollars, like really taking up people's time. And they were serious. Like someone actually sat down and wrote out this script, and then they like casted for it. And then there was like a wardrobe designer, and then there was like someone had to pitch this to the marketing and the CEOs, and then it went to production and they paid for it. And then you're going, we see the final result. Like this wasn't just, oh, it happened. Like the guys got together, they talked about the current events and it was done. Like this took some real planning. And I would have to believe that as they were planning, they're seeing Bud Light, right? I'm going, what are you guys missing? You're seeing Netflix, you're seeing Disney. Like, why are you guys not getting the message here? I don't understand. North Face makes really nice fleece jackets. I like them. They were really nice. Everyone loved them growing up too. And all the cool kids had them.
Yeah, they're definitely
cool kids are gonna want these.
It's definitely pushing agendas and getting back to women in sports. That's always been a problem. And I've noticed ESPN pushing that more and more. In fact, I think they're launching a network of ESPNW, which I don't think anyone's going to watch it because no one watches women's sports.
No.
Because again, the participation, I can go off on Title IX and all that stuff. And I'm all fight for every woman who wants to play a sport, have at it. I welcome it. But there's, as Dylan points out, and as we experienced when we played co-ed softball or ultimate frisbee, which I also grew up on when I went to college in California. I love the sport, indoor and outdoor, but you never have enough ladies to play the sport. But now they're going to give a whole network. It's just something they're pushing forth, but they push forth an agenda. The thing I like about this right now, what's happening with Bud Light, Target, North Face, and Ford are going to join it too. People now, we've now democratized this issue. People get to vote with their dollars, and those dollars don't go as far. And we see like, well, I can be in the liquor store area or where the beer is, and I can just move over to Coors Light or Miller or another brand and get away from Anheuser-Busch.
Or no alcohol at all.
Or not at all. Exactly. But you can vote with your dollar. You can see Bud Light's dying as a brand. Target's they're plummeting in value. So these agendas are really happening with the economics. But let's go back to economics and get off the woke subject. Now that everybody's awake here, and go off for the next topic, which is go ahead, Dylan. I'm sorry.
I do want to shift because it's a stat that I've heard thrown out there, and some of the more like kind of I don't know if you heard like the red pill style circles. They talk about interrelationship dynamics and stuff. And one thing they like to comment on and throw out is that 80% of the purchasing decisions are made by women. And so so while we as guys are sitting here like, what is the deal with this? A woman's perception of sports, a woman's perception of a lot of these things is very different than a man's perception on these things. And then, so if you see these campaigns, they don't speak to you as a man necessarily. But there's clearly a segment of the population that it speaks to, and knowing that 80% of the consumer purchasing decisions are made by women in the family household, like companies know that very well. And so they're going to create a message that speaks to and resonates with someone that might be more receptive to that kind of thing, or just doesn't care, doesn't strike that same type of chord that it does for other people.
What kind of women does this resonate with?
Like
my wife watched it. She went with her face. It resonated, but not like in a good way.
That's why she's your wife, Patrick.
I know, but what women resonate to this, bro?
I
don't know a single girl that's like, man, that North Face commercial, they really just captured the beauty of women so well, and it was lovely.
It doesn't polarize them, there'll be certain campaigns. Something in marketing, what they do is like they try to do polarization. So what they try to do is they try to polarize their audience to the people that they want it to resonate with and the people that they don't. And then you have the people that like see it and they don't really get a strong reaction. They're like, what? Oh, that's not that big of a deal. And like, that's kind of how I've seen it, because I've had conversations with many women and talked about sports and things like that. And the way they approach it is like, well, as long as like everyone gets to play, like this is how my mom was. And I love my mom, but it's like, as long as everyone gets a chance, I'm like, Mom, but like the kid that can't even kick a soccer ball or receive a pass is now on the field and he's messing up every drill because we have to stop every 10 seconds because he can't like keep the ball in play. Like I want him to learn, but at the same time, like there's a certain point where it's more than just participation. And she's like, well, you're in high school. And I was like, Mom, you don't get it. You just don't get it. And so there's that attitude of like, well, as long as everyone gets to participate, it's this very like communal attitude.
I appreciate your mom, because otherwise I wouldn't get to play. So I resonate with people like your mom. Like, hey, I'm sorry I suck, Dylan, but I really want to try. So
I put on soccer training camps. I help people that didn't. I did my best, but like there's a time and place when you got to be competitive and you got to get those reps in.
There's a certain level of expectation.
I remember one time I played basketball with my cousin and his buddies, and I showed up to play basketball, and it was awesome. And after about 3 minutes, these guys used to play ball in high school. After about 3 minutes, I was so gassed out, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't breathe. I sat down, and I realized I'm not going to play basketball with you guys. That's not what I desire to do right now because I'm dying. And you guys should continue playing so you don't suck. Right? I bowed out. Like, that was a pretty simple call here. I never let my team go down, but I appreciate if you guys let me play.
Patrick and I have this conversation because he asked me, because I'm a sports guy and I've always been a sports guy. I was like a student athletic director in college and played baseball and stuff. Always played sports. And he asked me, what's the appeal? I said, it's the competition. It's the ability to perform in the athletic field and show, how good you can be and how you can excel. And when you get to certain levels, you want to, that should override like participation. I mean, the participation trophy, I was coached as a kid. I did not hand them out. I did not believe in that. I said, they're in a box over there. If you want one for your child, go ahead and get it. But the team went 3-5. I'm not giving out trophies for that. That's just not me. But Dylan, just to wrap up the topic, I'm curious, and I've seen this happen before. Has your mom ever uttered the phrase, do we need to keep score?
Yeah.
Exactly.
We need to keep score. That's the whole point of the game. I'm a good loser. I just don't want to.
There's a comedy skit about that. Like Mike, I think it's Mike Birbiglia talking about like him playing basketball against his girlfriend, and it's a pretty funny one. She's like, "Why are you keeping score?" She's like, "Because that's the whole point."
Exactly. Like, how do we know when we're done? How do we know the object? I mean,
Jeff, remember Mason's game the other day at soccer? He really thought that the score stopped at 5-0 because he thought you can't get more than 5. Because when you're in like 5th grade soccer and you're just learning how to kick the ball, it doesn't matter if you're like winning by 20 or 6. They'll only give you 5-point advantage. Well, my son's team's never scored yet, so they've only seen it go up to 5. He thinks the game stops at 5, like you can only score 5.
That's
5
terrible.
goals. Yeah,
they need to really show them the score. Like,
yeah,
that's what I told my son. I was like, this is sad. I was like, I get that we're trying to be nice. I was like, no, son, you lost 17-0.
Yeah, he needs to know that, Patrick.
I did.
Yeah.
And I got him an ice cream, not a trophy. And I got the whole team ice cream. But yeah, they lost. So what do? We took him out and practiced with them. A couple of the parents, we got together and we take him out and we have fun. We learn. But this is not the way to go, guys. Like, this whole thing about breeding mediocrity and rewarding everyone for just breathing. It's not the people I want to be with.
children. We can reward children on a certain level for participation, but at some point, you learn through failure. You learn through wins and losses, because life, you win and you lose, and you have to learn that at some point. And if you delay that learning, there's a problem, and that's happened to a lot of millennials because of the one of the woke things what they did with participation trophies and the helicopter kids or helicopter parents to like, oh, Johnny needs a trophy. Like, well, he's got to earn one, and but. Talking about earnings, let's move on for this topic and move on to the next one in the interest of time here, because we could go on this for a while, I can tell.
Yeah, you guys with sports analogies, I lose you guys quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the next one here, and there's Ninja again, but the next I got it in there again. Sorry. Okay, so the impact of the economy. We're starting to see impacts across the board, and this is another reason why people are voting with their dollars. We see examples from the luxury brands, from private jet demand going down and hinting at the economy really being bad. And we see that small business spending is tumbling, and that's been around. This is a story from April. Small business are filing for bankruptcy at a record pace. And then job cuts, like these job cuts continue to hit us. Is this going to be the norm? Is this what they want? Is this like another part of the economy? And we're going to talk about the debt ceiling next, but I could jump right into that if you guys want to. But do you guys want to talk about the unemployment thing, the numbers that are popping up left, right, and center? Didn't want to see you nodding your head. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, a fun one when you said like, are private jets a sign of like a recession or the economy going down? Another one that I've heard that's a little more outlandish are strippers. That strippers know a little bit more. They kind of like a canary in the coal mine, because their clientele are wealthier people. And I know when there was the oil boom, they would actually fly strippers out to these oil towns, because you have a lot of people making a lot of men working hard, making a lot of money. And you can't really, like, if you're in a really small town in North Dakota with like 100 people, you can't really source a very good pool of strippers from that local town, right? You got to really dig deep to get anything of quality. And so they would fly out strippers from larger markets where there wasn't the same demand, and they would pay for them to come out because they'd make that money. But then when the oil boom started to go down, well, they stopped flying those strippers out. And
Patrick's face. I love Patrick's face.
So anyways, like that is a thing. And I've seen articles on it, so you can look this up. I'm not just making this up, but
is that bucket 1 or 2?
No, that's bucket 1.
That's definitely bucket 1. It makes
they fly sense. Out pretty humans.
Yeah, I mean,
somewhere else. This is absolutely insane.
It happened. I know when I used to live in Myrtle Beach, I know that there were obviously more people in the hospitality business between Memorial Day, which is this weekend, and Labor Day, because that's tourist season. More people were there. People move around. Vegas is now. I want to say this. I've never been in a coal mine, but I would probably bet that there's no strippers in coal mines, but maybe North Dakota. We'll see. But Patrick, I go ahead and react and let us know your thoughts here of this indicator.
I mean, I thought a good indicator was like a price of diapers. I don't even understand what you guys are saying right now.
This is a metric of.
I wouldn't have even have thought of that. That makes a lot of sense, I guess. But
it does. It's
I just don't understand.
Disposable income. It's an example of disposable income. I think
we're a pretty populated planet, don't you think?
Yeah, and there's more women than men usually. Yeah. That's usually the way the numbers break down. But
so you got to fly a bunch of people in.
Yeah. Yeah,
when you're middle of North Dakota and you're bringing in thousands of guys to work on fracking and extracting natural gas.
I can't even get my wife to fly with me.
Well, I don't think that she's the right demographic here.
Clearly not.
I think it's time to move on to the debt ceiling. There's no transition there whatsoever. So
the transition is, it sounds like we're in trouble no matter what way you slice our world here, whether you're judging what we're advertising or dressing our kids in, or now we're talking about debt ceilings. There's nothing good going on here.
Yeah, we'll get there. So the debt ceiling, that's the other major thing in the news this week, is the U.S. is allegedly running out of money. I didn't pull up Joe Brown's tweet, but he had a great tweet this morning. Maybe while talking, I'll pull it up here. But Yellen is yelling, screaming about the impasse, and we've got Biden's talking. Here's Joe Brown's video. I'll bring up his tweet while we're talking. But he started talking about
talking about. Oh, it doesn't matter if the debt ceiling isn't raised; they'll just stop spending less money. Like they just can't pay down. They're gonna have to find their debt elsewhere.
Well, I'll go over the 14th Amendment when it's my turn to talk here. But this is what Joe was breaking down. Joe Brown, it was a guest last week. Hopefully you saw that episode. But here's the 14th Amendment, what it was designed for, and I'll go over that in a minute. But guys, we're hitting our heads against the debt ceiling. Again, which is probably like at least the 100th time, maybe more in history. And sometimes they suspended it. But what are you guys rooting for? What do you think is the outcome here? Or how do you think is this going to play out? I'm going to start with you, Dylan.
I mean, this is a tough one. What am I rooting for? How do you think it's going to play out? I think it's going to play out the same way it's always played out, to some form or another. Like, there's like 10 Fast and the Furious movies. So like, it's like the same thing. It's just, they just keep coming out with another one. Basically the same plot, the same exact thing, but it's meant to get people to talk about it, draw attention to it while they're doing things over here, and they're going to figure it out because they've done it so many times before. And that's the more likely scenario versus anything major. And the last thing I would really want is for any sort of catastrophic collapse or anything to happen fast. I mean, that's not good for any sort of large system. Like if you stop people talk about, here's an example. People talk about Superman coming in and stopping a plane, with his strength. But they're like, the problem with that in reality, because the plane's big, moving fast, and Superman's smaller. And if he grabs the plane moving that fast to try and slow it down, if he slows it down quickly, it doesn't matter how strong he is, the plane's going to crunch itself because of all the momentum it has. Right? Bad things happen when you stop big things that are moving really quickly. And so that's the last thing that I want. I don't want some, big catastrophic event to happen to the economy, because that's not going to be good for anyone. So I hope they figure it out. And I hope that better solutions, like things we talk about, like Bitcoin, gold, silver, that kind of stuff, start becoming more prominent over time versus needing to be prominent immediately.
Well, we're definitely going to be talking about that. And while we're talking about it, I did find Joe's tweet. So let me share that. And,
I love that tweet. Is that the one that talked about the discretionary spending? Yeah, that one. Yeah, go at the bottom. He said the bottom is the most important. Go to the bottom of the tweet.
Let me get there. So that for the benefit of those reading along here. So what happens? The debt ceiling is raised. First off, the lie: the U.S. is forced to default on its debt. That's not true. The truth will be they will pay its debt payments. And then he goes over the numbers and he points out that 4.6 trillion. And in the context is 4 trillion was enough to cover our budget back in 2017. So all we need to do is go back to the spending of 6 years ago. So not like we're going back to the 40s and 50s in the level of spending. It's a 6-year rollback. But the conclusion here, Patrick, I'll let you take it. What part?
No, the caveat is what I liked. He said Biden can choose to pay whatever he wants or not pay whatever he wants. So it doesn't really matter. He's going to get his way. I agree with Joe. Should we default or not raise the spending limit? We won't default, but Biden could choose to. And if that's what he chooses to do, I just don't think that the cards are set up for us to go anywhere nice right now. And I disagree with Joe a little bit here when he says that all we have to do is go back to 2017 spending. Sure, if gas was $1 a gallon, we could do that, but we can't.
Well, I think that what they're trying to throw out there, and it's a lot, and part of the video that Joe was talking about the 14th Amendment, which again, I'll tell you what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for that they don't raise the ceiling, because then things will start to be closed. People will see the impact, that we don't need this big bloated U.S. government and their spending, because they'll start closing things that are non-critical, or like national parks will close during this, like at this time, which will impact some people's travels, and maybe they won't be able to go to Mount Rushmore for July 4th because it'll be closed. But the government will still trudge along. They'll still be able to cover certain things, but in order to curtail spending, you have to have this happen. And now they're trying to get around with these loopholes in the 14th Amendment. And I'm going to talk about that briefly. We talk about history sometimes, but this is an important time to talk about it. Let me blow this up a little bit. This is straight. I know that people were talking about the 14th Amendment. So I went straight to the source. This is Cornell Law School. This is Section 4 of the 14th Amendment. So just so everybody sees that, it's the 14th Amendment. So scrolling down to Section 4, this is something that could blow up in their face. And I'm curious to see if you guys think that this could come back and bite these guys. Because if you just read this, the validity of public debt was what they're saying, that they can just negate this and just raise the debt ceiling. That's one of the arguments that they're putting forth. But if you look at this, if you say debts incurred for payments and pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned. So I think that the whole rebellion insurrection thing could come back to bite them on this. I'm bringing this topic up. I don't know. Again, I'm rooting for them to hit the head on the limit here, because you can't just go and ask your credit card company if you, as an average American, if your limit's 5,000, you spend 5,000 on your card, you're out. You can't just say, hey, I spent $5,000. Can you give me more? But that's what the U.S. continues to do, because they control the coffers. They control the ability to do this with a debt limit, and they just keep raising it, and then they print more dollars and sell them on the market. And that's the other question. If they do raise the limit, who are they going to sell these dollars to? Who are they going to sell the bonds to? If we may be buying our own bonds again, like what the UK did. So things are going to break, and things are going to start to break down, and it's just part of the dollar losing its value. I'm rooting for the debt ceiling to actually be hit.
I mean, I think that'd be the wise thing, right? Hey, you're spending too much. You need to really focus on what you're actually spending and reduce it. But and why would they do that though?
Because I think they want to curtail the spending, and looking at the Republicans want right now, because they're not the ones in charge and pushing in the White House, but it's now the Republicans' turn to say fiscal responsibility, and which they should have. Like states, I mean, local and state level, they have balanced budget laws, and then but the federal government doesn't, because of the Federal Reserve. So this is, if you want to take down the Federal Reserve, you can make a strong argument that you need to hit the debt ceiling. That's one of the steps to get there.
Yeah.
But just bringing up the Dixie, I don't know if we want to talk about it a little bit, Patrick, but we talked about that last night on our AMA for our group. And we look at the Dixie a lot. We asked Joe about this last week, if we're going to see the end of the Dixie. But the Dixie is just a comparison of 5 different currencies for the most part, all Western world. And as we're going to talk about world economics just next, I mean, the fact that the dollar is strong against the euro or the won or the Canadian dollar, it doesn't mean much when you start factoring in the BRICS nations. So this metric could wind up being less and less important as we move forward. But let me turn the page here over to the world stories here. So, and you mentioned Bitcoin earlier. This is a huge story that came out, and it's Patrick and I both looked at it this last night. Hong Kong is greenlighting crypto trading. So that is a big story. They went on CCTV, and Hong Kong is the gateway to the West and for China in a lot of ways, because they kind of buffer it. They have you have the China and the CCP and what they do, but Hong Kong is it's isolated, but they have a lot of it's like they're if you're a network guy, it's kind of like your firewall. The firewall to the Western world is Hong Kong. So the Western world can interact with Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong interacts with China. And it's like the gatekeeper between the world. So the fact that Hong Kong can now deal with Bitcoin and trading really essentially opens up China again back to crypto. So that's why we're seeing the bump there. Patrick, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of that is true. I also think you're seeing a little bit of a drop, though, would be what we're really seeing today. That's what we're noticing right now. We're seeing Bitcoin approaching close to 25 again. Mm-hmm. And I believe that is mainly because of the Dixie, not so much of what's happening with China. I think the China stuff, that was cool news for a lot of people. It might have pushed a little bit of a rally. But the reality is we're still fighting against the inflationary aspects of our fiat currency. So as the Dixie shows, the dollar is going up. So it takes less dollars to buy Bitcoin. And that's really what we're seeing here, especially because of the money supply. We've talked about this before, the money to supply. That's like actual dollars going out. Now, what's happening is, as the U.S. is not creating any more money, right? We're not selling any more treasuries. We're not creating any more dollars. And as the debt is coming due and people are cashing in, basically the money goes away. The money supply disappears. So less dollars. And Joe Brown talks about this really well. He says when the money is abundant, then it's cheap to borrow. And when money is scarce, it becomes more expensive. So what you see is the value of the dollar becoming more expensive because it's becoming more scarce, especially as all these other global fiat systems crumble faster than the dollar. So I'm not really sure why Bitcoin is playing this game, but the reality is I could see Bitcoin dipping here pretty hard as we enter a period of hyperinflation. But I think deflationary aspect of the dollar over long term, we're still looking to see some huge gains in Bitcoin, regardless of what any nation decides that they want to announce or not announce. Bitcoin doesn't matter on the nations. We're going to keep going up.
Yeah, I think people are definitely starting to learn that they have to learn the difference between money and currency. They have to understand that the currencies and the fiat currencies are going to eventually die, and a lot of the Western world has not seen that before. Whereas a lot, Greece and Argentina and other countries considered third world, or Zimbabwe, where the currencies go away because they're fiat means by decree. The government is decreeing that this is worth something, but it's not, because it's not backed by anything. Whereas these other countries going back to gold standards, and Dylan, we can talk about that next. Do you want to chime in on the debt ceiling or this?
Just on the Bitcoin price and stuff in these headlines, I think one thing to always keep in mind is people like to, look up at the clouds and see things, right? So people like to find meaning in patterns and stuff that may not actually be the real meaning. So you see these headlines, and they could have something to do with the price movements, but it's probably a more holistic picture. Like, there's a lot of things going on that make the price go up or down, and it's really hard. Like, if you knew exactly what it was, right, you'd have infinite money. And I think Patrick's probably a little more on with the liquidity comments on the Dixie going up, showing that there's a little bit less liquidity in the system, and Bitcoin still being a considered a risk-on asset. Therefore, it kind of contracts a little bit, or you can buy more Bitcoin with the same amount of dollars if relatively you get more liquidity there, or less. So I think that's important to consider here. And I think one other thing that I heard in an interview, I think it was Michael Saylor that said it and talked about it. He's like, the U.S. government has, I think, $50 billion worth of Bitcoin, something like that. And this is a play that could happen. But he's like, all they have to do, if they want to double the amount of USD value of that Bitcoin, all they have to do is announce that they're not selling it, right? And they just have to put out an announcement that we have this Bitcoin, we're going to keep it. We have this Bitcoin, and maybe we'll buy some more, right? And that's all they have to do to just completely destroy any sort of models, any sort of things. Like that's the position that a lot of these bigger entities are potentially in. And I know it's something like that Bitcoin people have been talking about for a while, but that is a reality, and that is a factor that you have to consider. It's almost like a black swan, but not because you know about it. That would just completely change the dynamic. All it takes is someone important or some entity important to announce that, hey, we're doing this now, and the game completely changes. And I think because of that, like, we're kind of in a holding pattern. No one wants to necessarily be the first one. Like, the big boys don't care that El Salvador did it, right? It's like, cool, El Salvador, a really small country, like, they're not very significant on the bigger scale, and they can play that down. But if someone like the United States, Russia, any sort of these major countries really went all in with it, that would completely change the dynamic of it. And so I think that's something to consider when we're thinking about Bitcoin price, what it's doing, why it's doing it, and its potential.
Well, this reminds me of back in the day, Jeff. I was on government auctions, and they used to sell Bitcoin. I remember you'd get like 5 Bitcoin, and you'd have to put it on your credit card, and you got to pay like, $11,000 for all 5 Bitcoin, and they just want to get rid of it. They don't know what they're doing with it. And I started watching it go from 5 Bitcoin, and then pretty soon they sell up by like the 1.2 Bitcoin, and it was just from seizures of things, but people don't know what to do with it. So you were buying Bitcoin at a discount from the government with your credit card at an auction. Now that is not happening anymore. I haven't seen that for a while, because they're not selling Bitcoin at auctions at government sites where they're selling cars and Hummers. No, they're not doing that anymore. They understand what it's worth. It's a different market now.
They do understand what it's worth, but I think there's a huge hesitancy to make this announcement, because just like that $50 billion number, to me, that $50 billion is like 2 to 3 days of spending of the U.S. Treasury. It's a drop in the bucket considering of everything else. Like our national debt's like $30 trillion. We're talking trillions of dollars that we spend, and that's all driven by the dollar. So the dollar so far surpasses the capabilities of Bitcoin right now in market cap that they're focused all on preserving the dollar, because if they prop up Bitcoin, the dollar is going to crumble, and that's the gains they would make in Bitcoin would be far not outweigh at all the losses they would suffer in the dollar. But other countries are starting to do this too. And while you're talking about countries, big countries need to start stepping up. But there was an announcement in Miami last week at the Bitcoin 2023 that Indonesia is adopting Bitcoin. Now, that may not sound much, and those of us in the Western world, like, we can't even find Indonesia on a map. But I went and looked up, and I caught the stat. I wasn't sure about this, but do you guys know how where Indonesia might rank in the world population on the planet as far as countries?
No.
Any guesses?
5th?
Yeah. I
Fifth
think it's
is-
about 200 and something million.
Oh, you guys are a lot closer than I was. I didn't think they were top 10, but you guys were pretty on it. It's China and India, the two countries that are over 1 billion, in the U.S. Indonesia is 4th, and it's interesting to see these
How many
other
people
countries.
they have?
Almost as much as the U.S., 275 million.
Holy moly, yeah.
And then Pakistan is 5th. Brazil and Nigeria, all of these countries, 4 through 7, are all Bitcoin or favor Bitcoin a lot. So that's very interesting. Then you've got Russia there in 9th, and it's interesting to see these numbers. Like, I had no idea Indonesia was that populated. But I think the main story I wanted to talk about, and Patrick, you and I found this the other day, the timetable seems to be moving up. And this story that we found about SPIEF, which is the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, this is a meeting of 81 countries last year. I don't know how many are going to attend this year, probably similar numbers. It's happening in mid-June. And for those who don't know, this is the event where last year Putin announced that the ruble was tied to gold. So who knows what we're all talking about, the BRICS event in Durban in August. The timetable may be accelerating. They may make an announcement here in June, which is 3-4 weeks away, to accelerate that timetable, which would accelerate CBDC. So I think that with the debt ceiling and the event horizon, it could be getting closer, guys. What do you think?
To accelerate. So these events, so you're saying these events are happening to lead up, to set the stage, to announce a potential CBDC.
Well, I think it announced changes on the global stage for currencies. I think all of that is on the table now. I mean, you had an announcement last year at SPIEF about the ruble and gold, because Russia was being sanctioned, and now that was part of their answer. And now you've got another meeting in Russia, in St. Petersburg, of 81 countries, and no one in the Western world's talking about it. And they didn't talk about it much last year. It could be interesting. This is something to keep an eye on. It's just something could come out of this, and we need to keep an eye on it. So I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention.
No,
Patrick,
I think that's good.
Go ahead. Patrick, you're sitting back and just pondering.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem completely out of the question. Like,
I don't think anything.
Something is going to happen, guys. It's going to happen. It's coming. Like, I don't know what it is. I feel it. Like, I think we all feel it. Like, the news is we're just waiting for it. Doesn't this feel kind of like the calm before the storm? Like, I really feel like this is the calm before the storm. Like, things just seem not too crazy right now. But then I feel like June's going to come, and then we're going to have a lot of stuff that's like just crashing up against the shore, like one after the other. We're going to have debt ceiling issues. We're going to have, world economic issues. You're going to have liquidity crunches. You're going to have mortgages that are going to be coming due even more, and the bank's failures are going to continue to collapse. Like, it's one more month, and then you've got the quarter ending. This is not looking good. So when I see a lot of this news that you're talking about here, it doesn't make me feel like we have something good to look at. And I don't think that this is out of the question. Like, they're going to be looking for solutions to problems. They created these problems, and their goal is to implement a solution. I don't think that I know that the plan is made. I don't think that they're wondering, when are we going to release what? What are we going to do when? I think they know exactly what they're doing. And I think the writing is on the wall. We just don't know the details yet.
Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, I think Patrick's kind of onto something. We know something's coming. You can feel like it's maneuvering and posturing happening right now, and everyone's maneuvering, trying to position themselves to be in the best position possible for when the event happens, when the catalyst happens that kind of changes everything, that shifts everything. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that can happen pretty quickly. If a lot of things are set up and moving behind the scenes, like all it takes is like one small, like little big, one small thing, or one big thing, and then it could be over. It could happen just like that, and then the change is done, and you'd be like, that was it. It didn't seem like anything, but meanwhile, a lot of things happened. A lot of things just got transformed. I think that's the ideal situation. If I was a strategy person trying to do that, right, that'd be kind of how I want it. Like
Kind of like the gold standard, how we went off the gold standard. It wasn't a big deal. It just kind of,
yeah, it just kind of
what's
happened.
going on?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a lot, but it is.
This is the way that history works, guys. When you're in the middle of historical events that not necessarily like an event, right? Something dramatically happens, like an attack or something. This is something that is more gradual. But when you're in the middle of the event, it's kind of like the lobster in the boiling water. It happens over time. But looking back, you can see like, man, we went through a lot. Look back 4 years ago compared to our lives to now. What's happened in the last 4 years? Like, would you have ever predicted all the things that have happened in the last 4 years ago? No. But looking back now, a lot of things in history happened and we went through them, and now they continue to go. And we don't know if it's going to be a dramatic event or a meeting in June or a meeting in August, but these are all little events. This is death by 1,000 cuts, and the dollar is dying or dead already. That's what's really happening. That's why we are silver, gold, and Bitcoin. And I haven't said it, and we got to get better at this, but if you like this kind of content, please like, share, subscribe. And we are going to be talking a lot more this summer because we do have an event that we're talking about in September and October that we're going to lead up to. But let's talk about one last story on crypto and then a little bit on gold, and then we'll talk about the event. So I'm just going to tease it that way. But this last story about crypto, which we got to talk about, and I think a lot of us have talked about this already online, but crypto security with Trezor. And I know, Patrick, you put out a short video on the Economic Preppers channel about this, so I'm going to let you lead this off. But you want to quickly break down 60 seconds what Trezor did and why we don't like it?
Trezor is not safe. Ledger is not safe. I told you so. That's what I'm saying. That's the short answer. The longer medium answer is they found out, and it was released, that there were firmware capabilities to shard your seed phrases, and even said this last week that it's okay as long as you don't get subpoenaed by a government for that information. Okay, guys, this is a problem. Okay, you don't understand what a crypto wallet is. I'm going to take a second and really explain this just real quick. This is a ballet wallet. It does one thing. It allows you to interact with the blockchain. With your private keys, you are allowed to transact and sign for transactions. That's all it does. The other solutions that you guys are trying to find, the new sexy tool that is out there, the new cool wallet, the new cold card, the Trezors, the ledgers, these things do not function on Satoshi's basic primal code. The reality is when you use something like Ballet, it is a cold wallet. There is no ability for someone to take your funds off of here unless you perform a physical action. That is the definition of a cold wallet. Nothing can happen. You can't accidentally send your money. You have to do something else. Trezor, Ledger, these companies allow you the ability to interact with your crypto wallet in a means that's not necessary. There is no need for that added level of security and complexity. The basics of this is your seed phrases are your security. All you need is your private seed phrase. And if you keep that secret and keep it safe, you don't need these $200 wallets. You don't need to worry about Ledger attacks or Trezor attacks or any of the FUD that's out there. It's just like putting your silver in your safe.
Dylan, is this the Bud Light moment for Trezor?
Well, yeah. So there's Trezor and then there's Ledger. So
no, that's like the Enron.
So
Bud Light was like stupid. You're stupid. Like Bud Light, you like shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah. I think it's pretty bad for Ledger that they came out with the sharding and that can be subpoenaed by the government. It's like that's kind of why Bitcoin exists, is so that you can prevent government meddling in the money and then you can prevent them taking your stuff. Like one of the beautiful things about something like Bitcoin is that if you can hold your seed words in your mind and you generated them in a way that they can't be copied, they can't be seen, no one can take that from you. It's one thing that you can actually truly own if you set it up and do it appropriately. But if you start outsourcing your trust to different things and you start outsourcing it to these technologies that are the new hip thing, you don't know what type of risks are baked in there. These software updates that come in on these devices, you don't know if that's actually a legit software update or if that's a phishing attack that is introducing a Trojan horse into the device. And that creates a lot of risk if you have a lot of money. Now, these can be fun to play with and stuff like that. But if you're really serious about this, you need to understand what their limitations are for these devices. And on top of that, I think a key thing that is really, really should be hammered home is you don't want to be using the device that everyone knows about. Like, you don't want to announce how you're storing your crypto or your Bitcoin online. You don't want to be like, yeah, here's exactly how I do it. I've seen so many like forums on Twitter where people are like, yeah, here, I keep mine like this, right? I've written my, they're like, I carved my seed phrase into my bed frame. It's like, well, like, don't tell the world that. It puts a target on your back. The whole purpose is like, you need to be intentionally vague. Throw in some misinformation there. And if you have a Trezor or a Ledger, like, it's probably okay in the short term, but you really need to think about the compromises you're making and the risk you're taking on, and really consider, is that something where you want to keep your funds for a long time? Because everyone knows what they are now. Like, they're the most popular names in cold wallets in the crypto space right now. Trezor, Ledger, like Cold Card.
It's definitely no longer a cold wallet. I can definitely say that definitively. Ledger is not a cold wallet.
And
period.
And the fact that like the CEO is coming on and saying like, yeah, like we're doing this thing to enhance usability, but we're also basically giving the government a backdoor into your seed phrase. Like, that is the antithesis of what Bitcoin is about. And so now you have a company who has chosen to go down a path that is not the Bitcoin way, like Patrick talked about, is not like the way to have self-sovereignty. And so it's like, do you really want to be involved with a company that does that? And do you really want to be the scapegoat? It's much better to sit back and watch other people do that and let the free market decide if that works, versus you being like, yeah, let's do it. I'm loyal to this company. No, be loyal to your own self-sovereignty and make the decision that's best for your own individual situation.
Dude, I heard Ledger basically, this is rumor mill, but I heard Ledger basically hid from Bitcoin 2023. Like, hid.
Yeah, because they got bought out probably. There's probably under the table deals like from some of the massive crypto money printing schemes that they got paid off.
They're probably just so embarrassed they couldn't face their community. How could anyone defend that?
They're not embarrassed.
Send a Ledger sales rep in on crypto who understands Bitcoin and have them sell your product.
They switched teams. Patrick. That's what happened. They got paid off. They got bought.
The good news is that we have 3 crypto experts here that can talk about this. But the best thing we can tell you, like the easiest way to get people to understand this and get them involved in crypto is to simplify it. And that's why we like the Ballet wallet so much, because first off, you need to know, regardless of the wallet type, what Ledger's got issues now. All different wallets have issues at different times. You need to understand what a cold wallet is, and it's something that you'll hear a phrase called air gapped, or just you don't need the internet. That's what you need. Is you need to have a way to every hot wallet or warm wallet or cool wallet, you got to connect it through software to get to the internet for the wallet to use your private keys to see what you have. That's not true with Ballet. Ballet is entirely cold. It's like having your seed phrase. It's everything off to the side. It's a cold wallet, and you don't need the internet. So you need to understand the difference between a cold wallet and a hot wallet. All these wallets that have issues are some form of a warm or hot wallet, because there's software updates. You have to connect to the internet, and these are all risks with the device or the way to use the device to get to see what you have. That's not true with Ballet, and that's why we like it so much. And it's a simple solution for people to give Bitcoin or Litecoin or other major coins and keep them and store them safety and security. And that's why we like it. We're going to be talking with them a lot, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But let me get to our final couple of stories here.
Can I just make a quick clarification, because this is an important distinction?
Sure.
Air gapping and cold wallet is not the same thing. Mm-hmm. The difference between cold wallet and hot wallet is simply this. One is connected to the internet whenever it needs to be. The other one is not. It's offline. It's not susceptible to malware or phishing or any attacks like that. Air gapping is a feature Ballet has within their wallet, but an air gap is when you are able to start the transaction process without being online And then when you get online, the security protocol for being there is no longer there, but you could still send the transaction. So that's the air gap part. And Ballet does allow that feature for air gap in their expert mode. But that's the big difference.
And we can go over those things in our event in September and October, because we're going to have ballet, and we're going to have a ballet, what do we call it? A workshop.
Yep.
So we'll have a workshop to explain those things, the subtleties, if you want to know those things. But for the average user, a cold wallet is the way you want to store things, because it's the safest way. And you need to understand what a cold wallet is and to identify it and say, like, oh, that's not cold because I have to connect it to the internet to see what I have.
And we're actually changing the vernacular. It's not cold wallet. It's called cold storage and hot wallet. I'm going to stop calling it wallets. Cold storage, hot wallets.
Fair enough.
And I do want to throw out is, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh crap, I have stuff on a Ledger or Trezor or whatnot, or you're worried about this, we're here to help. Like, reach out.
Yes.
Like, if you don't know what you're doing, if you have like any amount of funds that you wouldn't want to lose, and you're uncertain about the process of moving wallets, setting up a new wallet, whatever it is, like, don't go on online forums. Don't like start texting someone you haven't talked to in person or done a video call with. Like, you need to be safe. And these are the type of events like this shakeup with Ledger. Guaranteed, there are teams of scammers out there that are perusing all the online forums, all this stuff, looking for someone saying, oh crap, I'm worried about Ledger. How do I switch? And
I actually got those calls yesterday, and I answered them, and I helped them move it. Yeah, that was a simple process, guys. It takes 5 minutes. It's so easy. Call us.
And it's much better to call someone that you can trust. Like, do a video call. Like, I have a rule. I don't work with clients that I haven't done a video call with, unless I know you personally. I know it's your number and that kind of thing. But pay someone who knows what they're doing to make sure your funds are safe. It's worth it versus losing all your funds or being worried about losing your funds. Because, you know, the worst thing is someone being like, well, I can do it myself. And the next thing you know, everything's gone. That is a story that is way too common. We've all worked with individual clients that have had that happen to them or someone they know, resulting losses of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars.
Millions.
Call us before. It's a lot easier to work with you before an event than after you've lost your funds. So let me, in the interest of time, let me share this one story about precious metals. Then we'll talk about our event. So this story I grabbed, Poland, again, from Zero Hedge. Poland is resuming buying gold, just like a lot of other countries. They added 15 tons of gold in April. They're trying to get to 100 tons of gold. This is just another country that's like, the gold is up as almost 10% of their total reserves. And central banks are just collecting this stuff. And that's why we're going to be at a particular event at the end of September in Las Vegas. And let's talk about it, Patrick. So we got the Silver Symposium, which is at the end of September, through October 1st in Las Vegas. And there's a certain guy who's going to be emceeing the event, and you may recognize him. So we have got a lot of good content. You have David Morgan and a lot of good names. You have Ninja's going to be there, and the Ninja Nation's going to, Andy Scheckman from Miles Franklin. Ahusu, Joe Brown's going to be there. Jack for Nobody Special. You've seen a number of these faces before in our show. We'll probably have.
And I just confirmed last night. You guys are probably some of the first to hear this. Big Swear will also be joining. We're going to be doing Economic Preppers hosted Crypto Day, Bitcoin Day. It's going to be all about Bitcoin, all about prepping, and definitely why it's important to understand the need for silver as well as part of this solution. So you guys know, you've seen our content. Again, like, share, subscribe. I said it, Jeff. There you go. And, you know, gold and silver are part of our strategy. So the more that we can get together and learn about gold and silver, the better. And not just that, there are a lot of people out there who love silver, who are just like us, who are crypto people as well. And they don't know that they're crypto people yet because they don't know anything about Bitcoin. All they know about Bitcoin, guys, is years ago, it was supposed to be the 7-year cycle, and Bitcoin and crypto took all the money out of that market. And they think that Bitcoin is the enemy, when the reality is us Bitcoiners love silver. And so we're ready to kind of get on board and share and educate with each other. That's what you guys are there to do. I need my crypto community to show up and be that kind face that these guys don't know are there.
And we will have a link for a discounted ticket. The tickets are only $99, but we have 10% off. I'll put that link in the description. There's going to be room deals as well, but this is going to be a large event. It's going to be a big event because, you know, I'll get into that details, but the reasons why we have the things on our logo It's a reason why all those elements are like gold, silver, real estate, Bitcoin,
Real
everything
thing.
but the dollar, and the axis for the preppers as well. But Dylan, what's your thoughts on the? Are you looking forward to heading to Vegas at the end of September?
Yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. I think, people like to demonize gold and silver in the Bitcoin community and, vice versa in the silver and gold communities, but we're all after the same thing, real assets. And I think there's a lot of misconception there. And, I talk to people that are in that space and that they're like silver, like gold, but they just don't know enough about Bitcoin. A lot of them still to this day. And I think I want to hammer this point home, that people that know about Bitcoin are still the minority, right? So many people that are even in crypto don't even know about Bitcoin because they haven't taken the time to study it and learn it. And you still hear people to this day, well, I thought Bitcoin and crypto were the same thing. I thought they do the same thing. And if someone says that, it's like there are fundamental differences in a just random crypto project versus something like Bitcoin. And I think the most important thing, and I say this all the time, is understanding, doing your research so you can make an educated decision. And so if you are sitting there and you have any sort of animosity towards Bitcoin or even gold or silver, depending on what side of the fence you're on, do the research first. Like actually put in the time to learn about it, because you'll be much better off. I wish I would have done that with Bitcoin sooner than I did. That's like my biggest regret, because I heard about Bitcoin years and years ago, but I was in a titled state of mind. I was around people that didn't care, didn't value it, didn't think about it. So I thought nothing of it because I looked around my social circle. No one else was talking about it. So it's like, it must not be important. And I literally had my fingers on the keyboard to research Bitcoin, and I just didn't do it. And so if you're here, you're hearing this, just take the time to learn about this stuff with an open mind, so that when you make a decision, you know that you did it with the most amount of information that you had, and that you actually gave it your all versus like half-assing it or just ignoring it.
Plus, I'll also add, you guys who have been to any of events with me know how I like to throw a event. It's going to be like that. You can expect that, because Rob from Stock Pulse has given me the authority to basically do whatever I want with this show. And I am working to put together the best and strongest show that I'm looking forward to it very much, because I know for certain that the people that are showing up are like-minded, and we're going to show up together. This is really exciting for me. I know this event is going to be one to talk about for a while.
Yeah. So we got one more story to cover, but as Dylan's pointing me out on time, watching the clock, we got a few minutes left. We'll get to that last story in a moment about being prepared. But just to wrap up that discussion and drive home what Dylan was saying, I mean, let's give a little bit of history. Economic Preppers was born really last year, but it was not. That's not when we started. Patrick, Dot, myself, and Dylan, we've all been talking about the dollar is garbage for years. And we started to go to these events, and like we would go to these gold and silver events, and we would see that they're not talking about crypto. There were walls, there were silos. Like even like we go to a Bitcoin event and they wouldn't be talking about other coins, but they wouldn't know the difference. You need to learn about Bitcoin to understand where Bitcoin is, and then have a basis of comparison if you want to talk about Ethereum, XRP, Litecoin, or whatever. And you can get that education if you come out to visit us in September and October in Las Vegas. Very easy to get to. There's going to be gold people there. There's going to be silver people there, and everyone's going to be learning something. Because if they spent 20 years in silver, they're still learning about Bitcoin. If they spent 5 years in Bitcoin, they don't understand the value of silver, or the use case, or why you need gold, silver, precious metals, why you need to have exposure to all these things. But that's why this brand was born, to tear down those walls. And that's why we went to those events, because we see the value. Like they all have the common thread of the dollar is garbage, and we need to buy real assets, as Dylan said. So speaking about being prepared, we'll get to our last story for the day. And this is one that Patrick wants to share. This is one of our prepper ideas, and something you can take action with today. So
if you guys haven't seen these are Gamma Seal lids, and these are really good for 5-gallon buckets. You can get like food storage buckets, and I like them for a few things. One, keeps things really dry, so you could store things in a cool place and it seals it off. You could put oxygen absorbers in there as well. It's good for food storage, really great for dog food.
Hold it up again real quick. Yeah, I finally made your image.
and it's really not that difficult. Really, the lid just seals and snaps in onto the top of the bucket, and it allows this to have this really nice, beautiful seal, and stays pretty dry. So I really like these because it just really works for keeping some of the things that you need to keep in like good quantities. Let's say dog food. or some kind of pet food with some oxygen absorbers. It's a great way to store some of
Yeah.
that stuff.
I was going to recommend the oxygen absorbers there just as well, because you can get a good seal, but if it's going to last for a long time, you want to get the oxygen out of there too. But that's a great
and a Mylar bag even, but it just really depends on what you're using it for. One thing I like to use it for, just a tip and trick at my house, is I have pellets at my house for my like barbecues and some stoves and cool stuff like that. So that can store in there for years dry. And if I have that stocked up, it stores better than the bag that it comes in.
Yeah, and just simple things like that. I mean, that item was like, that's under, it's $14 on Amazon, and you could probably find other places too if you're not a fan of Amazon. But you can see the product, you get the idea. You can be for like $20 or less, you can get a
I think they're like $7 at Walmart. They're at Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. You can find them anywhere.
Yeah, you can get certain things to be prepared. Like I said, one of the episodes before, you like a couple bucks, you can get a box, a carton of matches. I mean, there are things that you can do at all price points. You know, you can get a silver dime for under $3. Like, there are things that you can do so you're prepared. But I'll throw this one out before we go out and wrap up the show. But I mentioned this, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I think the challenge of the 10 by 10 challenge is find 10 people within 10 miles in case you need something. And so you have a local community. You got to build that community. The community is a big important. Lynette Zhang talked about it. She's one of her 8 pillars that she talks about. Community will be a major factor at some point, if it's not already. So you will have to rely on your neighbors when things start to break down, as we kind of see. And it may not be tomorrow, but a gradual thing, a progression in that direction seems to be the way that we're going. So great show, guys. I'm going to go around real quick to wrap it up. So Dylan, any parting thoughts?
Man, there's a lot happening. I think just pay attention, stay connected. Like Jeff said, build that network. And yeah, you'll be all right.
Patrick?
Got nothing more to add. Blessings to you all, family.
All right, and look for the link to the event. It's going to sell out, and we've got. I know I've been watching over Patrick's shoulder. He's doing a ton of work to get this ready. It's going to be an amazing event. We've put on other events in the past with economic preppers and before. But this one's going to dwarf them all, and it's going to be a major blowout. And if you're going to have a major blowout in any city in the U.S., it's going to be in Vegas. So it'll be an easy way to get to, cheap tickets. I know a lot of community want to find a venue for us to all get together. This is it. So please join us in Vegas at the end of September. So whether you're a silver guy, a gold guy, or a Bitcoin lady, we don't care. It's going to be everything. It's going to be there for you. So with all that said, I'm going to leave it there and hope that you're prepared and not scared. Take care.